Take it out the parking lot.
That's it. Let's go.
My brother would succumb to that, especially after a few beers, you know.
You're up on the wrong side of the tracks.
Especially when he had a few beers.
No.
He was in a bar in Montreal when he's got classical.
We're all set, Bill, if you're, whenever you're ready.
Oh, curly hair. He says, "You're a frog." Okay. Frog for George.
Yeah.
The French Canadian. He said, "No, you're nothing but a. Take it outside."
Should have been in Quebec City then, but.
Yeah, he said, "What are you kidding me?" I said, "Take it out of the parking lot." He was,
Let's do it.
you know, people are amazing. You know, it's.
Hey, sunshine.
Hopefully, it's all about non-substantive matters.
No, it's not.
You notice the close heads held together.
Hopefully.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is
No, I'd like
3
to-
p.m., Thursday, July 7th, 2016, time for the meeting of the Gateway Services Community Development District. Board of Supervisors, would you please stand and join us in the pledge to our flag and country? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. If you wish to speak to the board this evening, please fill out a form and give it to the manager here. Mr. Manager, please hold up your hand so they'll know where they go. If you have a noise-making machine like this, please put it on mute for the balance of the meeting. I suspect that we have some speakers this evening that would like to talk about the Fun Park. Could I be correct? If you're here to speak about the Fun Park, please hold up your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's what I count. Are you? Yeah. Okay. 6. The board has received a lot of emails regarding the Fun Park, and we have a very long agenda this evening. We don't want to try and keep residents from expressing themselves, but it would be very helpful if you could keep your comments direct and on point and as short as possible so we can move smartly along. Mr. Manager, who is first?
First is Whitney Tinsley. Oh, I'm sorry, you want to, oh, okay, let me shift them around.
You don't get to dictate what order you get called in. It's a lottery.
The Aaron Kalin.
Wow.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Erin Colleen. That's last name is Kallin.
Hold on just one second, please, Mr. Neubauer.
Yeah, I'd like to have the courtesy of reading something, an email into the record to kind of introduce these folks, if I may, these young people.
Any board members have objection?
No.
Please hold for subject. Please proceed.
Okay. Just a minute, I'm trying to retrace my emails. Ladies and gentlemen, I received this email from a gentleman by the name of Philip Murray, and it's stated, to the Gateway Supervisors, I work until 5 p.m. tomorrow, today, and I cannot make the meeting to have my voice heard, so here is my input. My 12-year-old son and I play basketball at the park at least once a week. We have been there when the courts are full of older teens and young men. Even though young men can sometimes seem intimidating, I can tell you that they are always respectful, always polite. The two of us have occupied one half the court with 10 on the other half, and they are never rude, never threatening in any way. Our best friends live in Cypress Point, and their home backs up to the park parallel to that court. They have never witnessed any criminal nor violent behavior, just young people having fun. I understand that the Lee County Sheriff's Office report confirms what they already know. My kids, Danica, age 15, and Cargan, age 12, two beautiful kids back there, and their buddy Aaron will be here to speak tomorrow.
End of statement.
End of statement.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you. Aaron, would you spell your last name for me?
Kallin.
Kallin?
Yes.
And did you give us your address?
That's 12892 Vista Pine Circle in
Please, thank you very
Pinecrest.
much. Please proceed.
Okay. So I counted it out this morning, and I live exactly 36 steps from the Gateway Fun Park. I walked there this morning, and I see the park from my bedroom window. I see it from my living room window. I see it from my pool, from my lanai. I live right next to it, and I grew up with this park. Never has anything criminal or bad or anything happened at that park, like in the 15 years that I've lived here. And there have been some issues with this park, but any of those issues, all of them have happened after hours. They've all happened at nighttime when there's no one there, or when there's no one there to like watch over, when it's all just teenagers at night. Now, you think that getting rid of the basketball court will help this problem, but it won't do anything. All it will do is remove a valuable part of Gateway. It'll take away a means of a healthy, fun environment that encourages teamwork, friendship, and physical activity. It's a positive environment. It's very positive. Everyone up there is having a good time, and it's all positive. And the biggest problem with removing this basketball court is that it won't solve any of the problems, because the problems are happening at night, and it's people doing things that they shouldn't be doing at nighttime. Getting rid of this basketball court won't solve any of that. People are still going to be there at night. People are still going to do what they're not supposed to be doing. The only way to solve it is by getting together, maybe calling the sheriffs and asking for a police officer to come by at night, or having a round of neighborhood volunteers or surveillance of some kind, just to tell people to go home when it's dusk. Set park hours that say, like, you can't be there anytime at night, so that park hours would be dawn to dusk. And at dusk, after the sun goes down, you have to go home and have someone or park surveillance, volunteers, someone to like help usher people to go home. But that would solve the problem, because then no one's there at night to cause any of the problems that are happening. And that way we keep the basketball court so we can still have that fun environment for everyone without having all of the problems.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Question for Aaron?
Nope, you did a great job, Aaron. I'll make sure I tell your parents.
Hey. Mr. Manager?
Okay, Danica Murray.
Hi, my name is Danica Murray. I live at 13442 Bristol Parkway.
Okay.
So my brother, father, and I are frequent visitors to the Gateway Fun Park basketball court, and I think it's a very crucial and important part of our community and should not be removed. My brother here is a up-and-coming athlete, and this summer he plans to make 10,000 basketball shots, and every day he spends between 1 and 3 hours at the court working for his goals. And he's not the only one. In order to keep our youth productive and out of trouble, I think we need to have a constructive outlet, and for a family community, Gateway has so few. I understand that there were concerns of drug dealing and usage at the Gateway Fun Park, but we can't play that association game with basketball, because if you're removing the court, then it can still happen in a field, in a park, wherever it may be, because basketball is not automatically equivalent to drug usage. There was some discussion about instead putting in a pickleball court. I feel that this would not be a productive solution, because not only will it be expensive to remove and put in a new court, but pickleball is primarily a sport of the older generation, and Gateway is such a young and up-and-coming community that it should have access to things like basketball. The nearest court I know of is half an hour out into Estero, and so that's just not accessible for a lot of these young families. So with that, I really encourage you to keep the basketball court. Thank you.
Thank you.
Danica.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Manager?
Brandon Tony Baxter.
I couldn't remember.
This letter is from a resident in Eagle Point.
Please
My
state-
name is Kendra Sutton. I'm at 12450 Eagle Point Circle, and I am representing him because many people work during the day, so I do have letters that have been written to me. You know, stating for the record, is same as here, is that it's not about taking out the basketball court, it's about cleaning up the park. And it's about cleaning up the issues and how that can get handled. And as Brandon states in here, I'm a new resident to the Cypress Point neighborhood. I moved into this neighborhood thinking the park would be a great feature for a future family. I love the idea of being so close to the park and to enjoy the quick access. I've imagined growing a family where my kids are going to be able to walk to this park and play, and I would not need to supervise them as there's so many families around here and it's so close nearby. As a young man, my impression of that park has changed since moving in, and felt like I should have never moved so closely to it because of the problems that I have seen in my year and a half of living here. I walk my dog in the mornings as well as at night. I walk in various times on the weekend, and my concern of things I have viewed while walking my dog has now concerned me to the point that I do have a concealed weapons license and am a carrying person. I make sure I am equipped while taking my dog for a short walk because I am never sure what I might run into while walking feet from my home, which I should not need to, as we should all feel safe in our neighborhood. What I've seen and experienced is I have viewed actual drug deals taking place on a consistent basis in the parking lot during the day, after ball games, and even when ball games are not in procession.
Kendra, would you put the microphone a little closer?
Sure.
Thank you.
Used condoms laying around, beer bottles smashed at the park, etc. And I think we've all been in agreement that that is after dark. That is not that. But as far as the drug dealing, many of us have witnessed that during, after, etc. during the basketball. Another thing that makes me angry is the basketball courts are never able to use for me as a resident because of the non-gateway residents that occupy them in large numbers. I have even debated buying a hoop for my home because of the inconvenience, but decided not to because, one, I'm already paying for this park that is within walking distance that I am unable to use, and I found out, according to my HOA restrictions, I cannot have a hoop on the street. So with that, my only option is the park, and now that has not even been an option since I've moved in and resided. I would love to see change happen in this park for all of the Gateway residents, for the safety of myself, my neighbors, and those future residents of Gateway. Brandon Baxter.
Thank you very much.
You're the next
wait,
one.
Hold on, just
Oh.
wait 1 second.
Okay.
Mr. Newman, did you have a question?
Hi. Obviously, there's been a chain of emails that are there. The fact of known drug deals going on, do you have anything better that you can share with us, or that handsome guy with all of the gold and brass and Oakley sunglasses for, oh my God. How do they know that these, I mean, is it this open, that there's
Oh.
an exchange of
Oh, yeah.
packet?
Yeah. I mean,
See, I'm naive, I'm 74, what can I tell you? So there's somebody actually, you've seen, because you included yourself, you said we.
Yes.
You've actually seen that taking place.
I have seen. I've only seen it myself once. Now, I know
Once is-
residents, and I'm going to tell you, the residents that see it on a more frequent basis are those that own dogs, because they're constantly over there walking the dogs. I have been over there to visit or stop at the end of the day when I'm coming in and stop and talk to somebody, or somebody flags me down and says, "You aren't going to believe what was just going on here." And so I get out of my car, I walk over. There's been then stuff left on the ground. I was even notified this morning there were 2 plastic pouches, et cetera, that, you know, resemble. I mean, we're not naive to what is going on in the world. We see pictures. We know heroin is the #1 addiction now, starting to take the place. The pouches, and I'm not saying that's what was in them. I don't know if anybody knows that's what was in them, but there's things that are being left behind from the areas that people have witnessed this going on. I'm not, like I said, I've seen it once, but we have multiple dog walkers that this has been a consistent report. We have parents with children that have then gathered the children, and I don't see the one here that was going to come today, but even had a verbal confrontation with somebody doing that in front of her children, and took the children and left the park. So anyway, like
So-
I said, I have to take again what, I know I've even talked to some people that have said, you know, I've been over there. And not only that, we pick up the paraphernalia, you know, with the trash. So it's got to be taking place.
Thank you. Now, well, wait, just, are you finished?
I'd just like to ask a question, following up on that, because I'm figuring that he's listening to this, and if he isn't listening to this, then I'll be on the phone with Chris Laylor at the end of the meeting. But how would, can I just segue quickly?
Sure.
Deputy, if somebody saw these kind of packets, et cetera, is it helpful to you if they had a baggie and put those packets and notified you guys that there was this stuff there, and would you do any further or better investigation knowing that those things are there?
My name is Deputy Marjon. I normally work Central District, which is kind of gateway, but I work on the Tice community, which I see drugs every day on every traffic stop. I see guns every day. See a lot of crime every day. At nighttime, we barely get a call. Anything that has to do with gateway, that means from Daniels to 82, maybe 1 or 2 calls at nighttime. Nothing that has to do with suspicious vehicle or suspicious person. Normally it's either alarms or cell phones or just medical assist. When it comes to baggies being found or anything that has to do with drugs, we do like to know about it, because if we see those baggies, each drug dealer has a specific baggie, which is their brand. If we see an apple, we will know that apple is coming from Tice, and we will know where the person is in Tice. We see strawberry, we know strawberry belongs to the city. Now we know the city people are coming over here, we will transfer that information to the city. City will know, hey, this car, this drug dealer is driving to Gateway. They will do surveillance on Gateway, just waiting for the specific cars. Because it's not easy for a drug dealer just to get creative and start making drug dealers everywhere. It's specific that you need, they have the same customers, they have the same cars, they have it's a job for them. So for us to find all that surveillance, pictures, all that, yes, it will be helpful for us, because we will know who's doing it, what time they're doing it, what time they leave.
Wonderful question, Mr. Newbound. Did you expect all that information?
I expected the eloquence of that young man, absolutely so.
Are
Hey,
you
thank
finished?
you.
Are you finished?
I'm done.
Pam,
So
did I see your-
may I ask one additional question on
Sure.
that? So, for example, roach clips, joint butts, those kinds of things that are left, you would want those gathered and put in a bag?
When it comes to these things, it will probably be unuseful for us, but we will know that there is something going on. And as a gateway community, you know, you should always bring that up, at least call law enforcement saying, hey, this specific area is going on. That way we can do area checks, we will be more proactive in a specific area, other than just driving up and down the gateway.
Thank you. Kendra, would you hold on for just 1 second?
Sure.
Pam, did you have a question?
Well, basically, I think the officer, kind of answered what I was going to ask. And I wanted to know if you guys had called law enforcement, quite often, or as much, every time you see it.
The problem with, and I shouldn't say the problem, the answer to that is yes. And I do have to say, there is one resident that lives right next to the park that actually started contacting April, et cetera, in February, with pictures, with anytime there was a problem, with emails, as well as the property management company and myself. There was even a meeting held between the resident and April. It was always instructed to us that if there's something going on, that we need to call the sheriff's department. I think up until these things really started coming out where they've gotten bad enough that it's to the point people are starting to speak up that no, there were no calls being placed, because the signs say Gateway residents only, the park is being enforced, et cetera, no one here dusted on, and none of that is happening. But it was under the assumption it was that it's, I mean, I've lived here 15 years. It's always been taken care of by the
But
district.
we don't have any policing, authority, so.
Right, so, as well as the towing and that kind of thing. But, yes, there have been calls. Now, what has been explained to me, as well as April, very thoroughly in the last 2 weeks from the sheriff's department, is when those calls are made, they go to a non-emergency line. So, and that's the way that, unless somebody's being shot, killed, raped, whatever, there are other people in this community that are in much worse situations than let's go check out this car up underneath the trees and see if they're having sex or dealing drugs. And it puts additional pressure, from what was explained to me, on Lee County Sheriff's Office of how many times they come out on suspicious calls or to just drive through if they're not in this area as a special detail unless it's being requested, because it does pull the officers off of other areas.
Thank you.
Now,
The
yeah,
officer
but on
wanted
a suspicious activity, yes, they will respond. It is to a non-emergency line.
Okay.
And so it is whenever they can get out here, which they did say the same thing, as well as they have told April. She had an incident this morning, matter of fact, that by the time the officer was on his way, the vehicle was already gone. And that happens, as they said, the majority of the time, because it may be 45 minutes to 2 hours before they get out here on a just random call.
Kendra, can you let the officer, he wanted to respond to you.
On that note, would you come up to the podium so we have it for the record, please?
All right. On that note, like she said, you do see suspicious vehicle, you do call. It happens to be that time. Normally we work 8, 9 of us at nighttime. I'm talking about this is whole Central, from Gateway all the way to 41, from Daniels to 82. That's a huge area for us to cover. Huge. One accident, just put one accident with one person injured, that means 3 of us at least are gonna be there tied up for 45 minutes. You call a suspicious person, we are tied up on the crash. Now that gives another 3 deputies on the south end to be available. One person calls 911 and hang up. That means the 911 hang up comes first because we don't know what's going on. So that officer goes over there, and then we have a person in Walmart stealing clothes, which is right now. So that person goes to Walmart, gives the suspicious call way down here. When we finish, we come in over here, we have another crash. And that happens. When it comes to drug activities on the golf course, I guess you guys talking about the basketball court?
Yeah.
I see this all the time, every day. Basketball courts are meant for kids. I see it every day, they play, they have fun. The problem is at nighttime. The only way you resolve that is specific time from after 6:30, 8 o'clock, whatever, is closed. As a community, you write a trespass letter authorizing us. If we see anybody inside the basketball court, we go in, trespass them, they don't leave, we arrest them. That's how we do it in pretty much anywhere in the city where there's a lot of crime. I'm talking about big crimes. After specific time, we go, you there, you get trespassed, you get arrested.
Thank you very much. Now,
You're welcome.
Before you leave, I have just another question. And I'm glad you said the trespassing letter. I wasn't aware of that. What other citations? So if someone is parked, let's say in a parking area that closes at a certain amount of time, are you able to write some type of citation?
If the street is on a city street, meaning it belongs to the county, yes. If it's inside a gated community, then you guys need to give us authorized saying that yes, we can enforce those traffic infractions inside the community.
So we have to give you permission to write citations within
a
our
specific
community.
Yes.
Perfect.
Mr. Banks, I think for clarification, and for the deputy's clarification, that portion is not gated right now. I mean, it's on a, I believe it's on a district road, which is a public road, I believe. The road that goes to the fun park.
Yeah, but I don't even know if it has to be gated, right? As long as there's,
As long as it's a public road, we can enforce it.
or,
But
Okay,
that's on the
yeah.
road, that's not within the park itself. I think that's.
yeah, I was just curious if, regardless of whether it's a parking lot or somewhere else, if we give the sheriff's department authorization to write citations in those areas.
I don't believe they have the authority to write citations in a private parking lot, because it's not a
Oh, yeah, well,
violation
he
of
said
traffic.
public, so I was just,
Yeah, public. It has to be public. If it's private, then that would be a different ballgame, which
Okay, but,
I
I don't even know if they have authority to write tickets in parking lots. I guess that's the question.
Well, is the parking area or is the fun park private or public?
My position is it's public. Now, there might be a difference with some other law enforcement based upon some other conversations I had with Deputy Canfield. So I think that's part of what we need to do, is to have a coordinated discussion among the staff and law enforcement as to an approach. I think that's, because I think there are different versions of what can and cannot be done out there.
Wouldn't there be an agreement, because there was an agreement with the county where you were purchasing time?
That's correct.
And there had to be an agreement that allowed them at that time to write tickets or to enforce the.
I think that agreement was just a sort of one-page authorization. It wasn't a detailed agreement, to my recollection.
Correct.
Thank you, Kendra, thank you, Deputy. Mr. Manager,
But she's up again.
what?
Who's it for?
You,
Do you mind if we go to one of the other residents?
Dan and Elaine Esperson?
Esperson, uh-huh, okay.
Okay.
Again, Kendra Sutton, 12450 Eagle Point, representing Dan and Elena Esperson at 12421 Eagle Point Circle. We're writing to express our concerns regarding some of the issues that are occurring at the Gateway Fun Park next to the community of Cypress Point. Our family enjoys going to the park on weekends and evenings after work. However, we've noticed some occurrences that make going to the park frightening and unsafe. Following concerns are listed below. We have witnessed drug deals in the park. There have been numerous occasions when I've seen this happen myself. Drug paraphernalia has been left in the park that I've discarded so that my child does not pick it up. The cursing and yelling that takes place on the basketball court directly next to the playground where I try to take my 2-year-old son takes place during the games. This makes it where we don't utilize the park like we would like to, yet we're paying for it. Isn't it for Gateway residents only, since we pay assessments for it and it is posted as Gateway residents only? Alcohol has been consumed in the park. There's been marijuana smoked on the court during basketball games and park operating hours, with the trash and paraphernalia that has been left behind for Gateway residents to pick up. I have seen arguments with Gateway residents if they are asked to respect the park or the people trying to use it by following the rules. And I'm guessing she's insinuating arguments with the people on the court when they're asked to please try and respect not cussing or drinking. They have quit using the park most of the week to avoid these issues. There's been some vandalism to equipment, which costs us all. She's also picked up used sexual protection items left in the grass on the tables and in the volleyball sand. Parking in the grass under the trees or in the field instead of the parking lot in order to shade their cars. Lack of enforcement or monitoring by Gateway Services District of any of the above issues, even though signage is displayed at both signs of entry to the lot and to the park that is supposed to be enforced. We urge the Gateway Services District to look into and consider solutions to rectify these problems immediately that the residents of Cypress Point and other Gateway residents are experiencing.
Thank you, Kendra. Now, Mr. Manager, hold on for a
Yes.
second. Ladies and gentlemen, we've now heard from several residents about how they feel about the issues in the fun park. And we also have gotten from you, thankfully, many emails. Now, what I would like to do is to cut off the public participation on this unless someone has a totally different perspective, and let our operations manager bring us up to date on what she's been doing and what's going on. Is there any real objection to that?
I object.
Well, why do you object?
Because I've been involved in some of the conversations, also with Lee County Sheriff's Department, and then the way that they have come out in the Gateway Sun, which I take that kind of like a grain of salt, but also in some of the conversations about the way it's being interpreted versus the way it is being explained. You know, it was on the agenda today that one of the items is going to be $91,000 for Lee County Sheriff's Department. You know, that sounds astronomical, and it is, but $50,000 was cut from the original budget that was approved. So take the 50,000 out, now you're at 41. When you're talking, you know, I mean, you'd have to put it back in. The money's gone. I'm sure it's been spent somewhere else now, so it is 91. But when you're talking about spending $1 million on littorals or $5 million on the ponds, do we not have 18,000 to put a fence up and create a key card system just like the pool, or do something to protect the citizens?
Well, maybe we do, and you made some good points, but I would still like to hear
Sure.
from our operations manager at this point to bring us up to date on what she's been doing. If you need to come to the podium
Okay.
afterwards, we'll be happy to
Okay,
allow that.
thank you.
April?
There's one
There
other
was-
person.
Oh,
Well, no.
We'll get them, we'll get them. We'll get to you. April, please come to the podium. Start by introducing your new associates, and then bring us up to date on where you are on this issue.
Okay, April White, your operations manager. We'll take a little pause from this, and I wanted to introduce our new utilities staff. And first of all, we have the utilities manager, Chris Shoemaker, and a little bit of his background. He is a Florida State graduate, 5 years working for the Florida legislature, 5 years working for Southwest Florida Water Management District, 10 years at the Hernando County Utilities Department, 9 years at Silver Lakes Utilities. He's a water plant operator with C license, a wastewater plant operator with a D license, and served on Highlands County Planning and Zoning Board. He brings a lot of talent to our team, and we are very excited to have him here.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Also, Leslie Ritorovic, she is our new billings manager. And Leslie is a graduate of FGCU with a degree in finance. She's worked in banking and insurance industry for over 14 years. And while working in the insurance industry, she held the position of accounting manager, and her responsibility ranged from creating policy and overseeing the operations in accounting, payroll, and HR. So we are also very excited to have Leslie. She came aboard, and we put together a billing in the first week that she was here. So that was a challenge. And I think they're a great asset to our team.
Thank you for joining us. Back to work.
And just on a side note, I didn't bring Natalie in. Natalie is also, she's our billing specialist. She's with us from a temp company, and due to some personal issues, she may need to transition back to her home state. So we're also working on potentially retransitioning that position this month, and so I just wanted you to be aware of that. So that's some upcoming potential changes. All right, so enough with staff. Thank you for allowing me to do that. I wanted to clarify one comment that Ms. Sutton made. I thought I interpreted it as she made a comment that the Lee County Sheriff's Office is indicating that these phone calls relative to the fun park are a burden on the Lee County Sheriff's Department staff as far as prioritizing. If that was the intent of the comment, that conflicts with what Deputy Canfield is communicating to me. He says no matter what, if there's something suspicious that we see and that the neighbors are uncomfortable with, that it's not a burden to the Lee County Sheriff's Office. We are to call the non-emergency if it's a non-emergency situation, and we're to call an emergency 911 if we feel that it is an emergency situation. He made that very clear, that we are to continue to communicate to our residents that they are to call the Lee County Sheriff's Office, and that is not a burden on their staff. It rolls in just like Deputy Ozzie explained it, and it's important that they receive the calls. On another note, the agenda item that I have placed before you is we have, like Ms. Sutton said, we've been working on these issues since February when I arrived, and I agree that some things have escalated. Mr. Guy had asked me if I had actually visualized any of this activity myself, and at that point in time, I had not. I intended to delegate some staff to some after hours, but Anthony was on vacation. So, however, I did make it over to the fun park last night, and I did witness the collection of the folks for the Wednesday night pickup game. I did, there was, when I got there, there was a small child, probably 4 or 5 years old, with his parents playing on one hoop. And the other hoop had 2 teenage boys, white males, and 2 small black children, little boys, 8, 9 years old, playing on the other hoop. There was a collection of 2 grown males standing on the sidewalk as if they were waiting for others to arrive. And there was approximately 3 or 4 small toddler size, I think they were a little group of girls sitting on the grass as if they were there possibly with these 2 men. And I approached them and I told them of the meeting and that we're having some issues in the park. And I asked them if they were residents, and the 2 grown men, I say they looked 18 plus, but still young adults. They were not residents, so I think we do have non-residents attending the court. However, I asked, the crowd gathered, and I asked if anyone here was a resident, and a young man spoke up and said he was a resident, and I apologize. My interrogation skills apparently need to be honed, but he told me what development he was from, and I can't remember which it was because I'm still learning all of the communities here in the district. So I did witness that, and then I believe I heard that after I left, there was probably a group of 20 folks over there, and basketball is a team sport, and I'm not sure. I don't think we have a policy yet as far as drilling down on how to during park hours, whether we're going to police the residents versus the non-residents, and that's something that we'll have to address. Also, this morning I went back to the fun park, and I did witness a suspicious vehicle, and it was very odd. And they tried to pull into the Cypress Point community as if they were waiting on me, and couldn't get in. I sat there to wait to see if the gate was going to open. They were going to go in, and I attempted to write down the license plate, but apparently I wrote it down incorrectly. And then later, I did come back and I contacted the Lee County Sheriff's Office. They did roll out to see if they could find that vehicle. And so I saw both sides of what the community is witnessing over there. And it was the park was open, so I'm not sure exactly what our strategy is going to deal with those. One thing that I did think about after seeing that this morning is I would like to invite Deputy Canfield to come in and assist staff, and perhaps we need to train staff that's rolling around on gators and driving around in pickup trucks to heighten our vigilance, and when we see suspicious activity as staff, that we have the phone number readily available to the Lee County Sheriff's Office, and we can attempt heightening our sensitivity to our facilities at that level. So that's one thing that I'm going to tackle this week. So what I have before you is 3 options, and of course the first option that we came up with is, of course, we could re-engage a security company, either a private security company or the Lee County Sheriff's Office detail. We can always do that. I had given an estimate of, I took the hourly rate that was provided to me and just extrapolated it to see what, some additional coverage would cost. I was unable to actually evaluate the Wednesday for the 3 weeks, and I apologize for that. I didn't realize staff was out. But also, we could increase our staff resources and potentially to incur some overtime just to do some data collection. Of course, I don't encourage that our staff actually approach people and try to enforce park rules themselves. I don't think we have the appropriate training for that. But as far as data collecting, on what, monitoring the park at dusk, we could always do that as well. But of course, there's costs incurred with that. Right now, I'm struggling with staffing. The pool staff does have some extra responsibilities as it relates to the sports complex because we've been working on that. And we actually encounter the same issue at the sports complex when it's in season, because I end up with staff having to basically request that a crowd leave when they need to close the gate. And so basically what I have instructed staff is that either if they feel threatened in any way, they can call the Lee County Sheriff's Office for assistance, or if they cannot communicate to the crowd because the soccer complex is so large, that they leave and leave the gate open. Because I just don't think that one staff member needs to be approaching a crowd and trying to chase them off of our soccer complex field. And the other option, of course, is we can discuss fencing in the park. Fencing in the park is we will have some staffing, needs, because we'd have to close the gate and open the gate. But what I priced out for us is I got a rough estimate as far as a cost per linear feet, and then I estimated the maximum footage here. So if we redesigned the fencing differently, or if we put up a solid privacy fence against the neighborhood, of course that would change the estimate. And then if we went with less fencing and reconfigured it, it would be less than the 18,000. And then of course option 3, which is one of the options that the residents have suggested, is to eliminate the basketball courts and revise the park amenities. There's pickleball, shuffleboard. I think the parks probably as a whole, I think that's more of a long-term solution. We probably need to start developing a capital plan and potentially looking at that. There's neighborhood gardens, there's all sorts of things that we have available to us. But by the sounds of it, it sounds like that would be more of a long-term solution. And of course, we've had some suggestions for improving our signage. Perhaps we need to outline some park rules and try to have more of a community outreach and have somebody going over there and just talking with the participants at the park, asking if they're residents, asking if they're aware of park rules, and posting those things. And also a community watch. We could look into establishing a community watch program, and post those signs out there so they know that people are watching you and your behavior while you're here at the park. Again, from a legal perspective, I've been working with Tony on the parking issues. That's a separate, we have a couple of different parking issues. We've got residents there at the neighboring community parking in their backyard, which happens to be physically our property. So I don't know if we could possibly perhaps just provide them provide the HOA authorization to tow in that particular situation. I don't know what we can do about that, but we have been working with Tony on, we've got a policy in progress, but we are also working with Stony Brook because they're having some specific parking issues. And we're trying to collaborate on what the towing policy needs to be. So that is in the works, but it's been a slow go process. And also the overnight activity, we could increase the lighting in maybe the shaded areas. We want to be careful there as not to encourage nighttime activity and think that we've lit it up for them so they could be there at night. And then I'm open to suggestions, but I think it's in my, I would like to come up with a resolution, something that we can do in the short term, and fencing it seems to be the easiest least expensive, probably fastest resolution
Could
that
you
we
hold
can come
on
up
right
with.
there for a moment,
Mhm.
please, April? I'd like to hear from my fellow board members on what they've heard, both from our residents and from our operations manager. Doug, would you care to start?
Yeah, so I used to live in Pinecrest for 10 years. So that fun park was in my backyard. And I've got 4 boys, so I've spent a lot of time there. As a matter of fact, I remember calling Ed Seichel years ago, maybe 5, 6 years ago, when he was on the board, recommending that he see if we can get some budget for resurfacing the basketball courts and updating the playground equipment, things of that sort. And I've got residents that live in those communities that I've talked to. So I've seen the park over the years. It's used. I'm a big proponent of amenities for Gateway, just because I've got kids and I actually take advantage of them. So I think it's a critical thing for our community. However, I do understand that there are things that we need to improve and we need to do a better job monitoring and deterring. I put a couple things that I just circulated to the boards. I think that based on what I'm hearing from the residents, I don't think they're asking to shut the park down or to take things away. However, increase the safety and regulate or govern the policies and the rules that we have either posted or on our books. Now, from a board perspective or staff, the difficulty with that is some of the things that we have posted, we're not capable of enforcing those policies. You have no parking signs around the city with fines adjusted to it, but you can park somewhere and you won't get a ticket just because there's only so many law enforcement officers around. We don't have any law enforcement. We don't have any Gateway designated security personnel, and our staff is not equipped to handle those situations. And I actually, I went to the park yesterday. It was about 6:30, maybe 7 o'clock, and there was at least 20, 25 people out there. And I was going to get out of my car and do probably the same thing that you had just done about an hour earlier, and I didn't know how that would be received. And really didn't want to end up in a confrontation, even though I don't think I'm a confrontational person. But so I elected to, just to observe, and I think what you've reported and what others reported are correct. I think we need a short-term and a long-term solution. Short-term, what I hope the board might look is, I think we need to probably look at having Lee County Sheriff do some at least Friday and Saturday night rotations for 3 months, so we can gain some, maybe capture some data. I think staff can help be able to really understand the problem. And based on Kendra and feedback from the officers, it is hard to capture data. It's hard to know who's residents, who's not residents. What's the root cause? Because of response time, due to other priorities, it's hard to understand really how severe the issues are. But I will say any issues from our residents are critical. It's critical to them. It should be critical to us. So what my recommendation would be, and I don't know if you want me to go this deep, or I can stop and get other feedback and then circle back around.
Let's go to the other members
Okay.
first.
I'm
See if-
perfectly fine with
see
that.
What we can do. Margaret, can you give us your ideas?
Well, I'm just going to retrospectively say that this, we've sliced and diced our sheriff's detail, the money that we've budgeted for that. And as we've decreased the amount of money that we're willing to spend to have the sheriff details in here that are dedicated to Gateway, this seems to be more and more of an issue. People are coming in from the outside and dealing drugs prior to the detail being cut, the budget being cut down to almost nothing. Those people would have come in and they would have seen the sheriff driving through those areas, and they would say, wow, this probably isn't a really great place to try and do these things. So my thought is, we probably made a huge mistake. I thought we did at the time. As you remember, I did not want to decrease the sheriff's detail budget. And I think we need to reconsider looking at that and putting money back in the budget so that we've got, not on a regular basis. They change the hours that they come in and the days they come in. And people don't know when they're going to be here, and therefore they'll find someplace else to go.
How do you feel about a fence?
I don't have a problem with the fence. I do and I don't, you know, because you kind of, the fence serves its purpose. I can tell you this, it won't stop people that want to come in and use the facilities after dark from coming in, or that don't live here and can't gain access. They'll just climb the fence.
Do you have that problem with the pool?
No.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Do you have that problem at the Gateway Community Pool that is fenced, is closed at night, shut down after dark, the gates are rolled closed? Do you have that problem of people climbing the fence and coming in?
I'll tell you, we have a fence around our basketball courts in Stony Brook, and after the security guard leaves at night, the kids that come in from outside of the community, they'll just climb the fence. We've caught them doing it.
Then if someone does climb that fence and they fall and break a neck?
They're trespassing.
If they're a Gateway resident? I mean, I'm talking, the people that
I'm
are
not-
jumping
Mr. Chairman,
those
I would
fences
suggest
aren't
that-
drug dealers.
Let me just say, I'm not saying I'm against a fence. I'm saying, don't think that that's going to solve all of the issues, just because we put fences.
Please, please. Pam?
Well, I wonder if, I wonder if we have the legal right to stop and ask people, whether they're residents of Gateway, and if Gateway is not a private, district, this land is not private, it's public.
That's
Am I
correct, it's public, that's correct.
So, I don't know if we legally can have people not, use the court that aren't residents, and when you're playing a game, I mean, it's just like we live in gated developments. If we wanna invite people that don't live in our development to come in and have a cookout, that is our right. So you can't play basketball by yourself. So
If I may, just one clarification, the district has the ability to adopt rules and regulations for the use of the district facilities and differentiate between utilization by residents, by guests of residents, and by non-residents who are not guests of residents, but you can have different rates and fees
for that.
for them to utilize it. So I think it is appropriate to ensure, to
To
inquire of
put
an
something
individual whether or
together.
not they are a Gateway resident, or if we adopt a policy and rules and procedures for guests and or non-resident users, I'll call, to inquire as to their status.
So to finish,
I'm sorry.
I am kind of in favor of maybe a gated situation, because you can make a gate pretty high. And just like we have the card for the pool, residents can have a card for the pool. I mean, for the gated basketball facility. And you can also put lights that are motion lights for people that come in after hours. And of course, the signage would be excellent to have on the gate. So I am more in favor of something. I mean, we have to do something to monitor, to give the sheriff's department this information if people are using the facility after hours. But I would also like to say that I think it should be a joint effort with the people in the community to call the sheriff's department, because we live here and we pay taxes to Lee County, and we should be able to use the sheriff's department when we need it. So I think that we should have a joint effort, but I think a fence, that would be my recommendation, with the signage and lighting. And at some point, you can even look at cameras. So there are ways to do it.
And we pay assessments to Gateway Services District that our residents should be able to use those parks.
Please.
Exactly,
please,
exactly.
please,
I
I'm
agree
trying
with
to
you,
get
Kendra.
The board on record of how they want to proceed. Mr. Newbauer, you're up.
phone, really? Okay. This back and forth here, it doesn't work. The emails that come across with all capital letters and underlined and exclamation points, it doesn't work. If you want to create some noise, let me segue, but I'm not finished. You need to put the noise to that guy right back there. You need to make his life miserable if he isn't there at that damn park. As she said, we pay taxes, and part of those taxes goes to the specific specialist for that item, and that isn't us. That's him. Maintaining that park, that's our specialty. That's our obligation. Enforcing the rules, enforcing the laws, that's his specialty. Knowledge of the laws, that's his specialty. He's the attorney. So what we try to do is we try to create policy based upon putting all these pieces together, and instead of doing this, we try to do this, okay? So, I'm still confused. I don't know if anybody else is. We talk about this park being public, but then again, we talk about gating it up and closing it up and fencing it up and et cetera. If it's public, who the heck are we to be encapsulating this? Maybe I need a better definition of public.
No, any governmental entity that owns facilities, including parks and recreation facilities, has the ability to enclose it and provide for hours of operation of their facilities, in my opinion. I mean, you see, schools do that with their parks. You see counties and cities, municipalities do with their parks. And
So is public the right term?
well, we're a public entity, but that does not mean that we.
No, not what we are. I'm saying that park.
Is the
Yeah.
park public, which means it's open to anyone at any time? Or
Correct.
is it private with restrictions?
No, it's not private. It's a public
Right.
facility.
Yeah, and I think the better way to describe it is that it's a controlled public facility. The residents of Gateway have paid for the development and the operation, the maintenance of that facility. So they've paid a fee. You can close it, you can't deny public access, but you can charge anyone coming from the outside a fee to be able to use that. And the fee would be comparable to what these people pay for that facility,
Okay.
which is quite a bit of money.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, I'm doing a poll.
I'm sorry, are you
I'm,
finished? or
no,
not?
no, hang in there. By a show of hands, how many people here in this audience, and the reason why you're here is because, well, not Phil, but the reason why you're here is because you have strong feelings about this. Yes, I know.
Wait.
Hang in there, kids. The question is, how many of you feel that we should make some type of fee for people other than Gateway who, you like us, are paying for that? Raise your hand. See? Not a bunch of, no, you don't go for that.
That's not, no, because that's a total diversion.
No, my question, my time, I read all your emails, my time.
Are you finished?
No. How many people are up for fencing this park? How many people aren't for fencing it? Why don't you want to fence it?
Because it won't work.
Because people will jump the fence.
Well, and the people that are playing basketball aren't the problem. It's after dark at night when the teenagers pull into
It's
the parking
typically
lot.
Gateway residents, so they're gonna have a key, whatever.
So it's bad Gateway residents?
You know, how many people live in our community? Roughly.
We know.
20,000?
Hey, we tax you, we know.
How many thousands live here? We're a small city, we're a small town.
I know.
Things happen and kids are very mischievous and they're out there. I butt up to the park. I don't want a fence. I don't have a problem with anything. I'm over there. I have 2 dogs.
Okay.
I'm over there all the time. I did not get a chance to speak. I'm not for any of that. I've lived here 26 years in that house. I have backed up to that park. I have witnessed things. And in my opinion, since the basketball is going on, things are much better than what they used to be over there.
Yep.
I do not pick up the stuff that used to come over there before the people playing basketball there. The basketball players are not the problem. They're very respectful to me when I go over there. I've asked them to reduce the noise level sometimes of their cars. They've never disrespected me. And I've raised 3 boys there. We utilize that park. We have for 26 years. And
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would suggest that, not to interrupt the speaker, but I think it's best from the standpoint of the board and the public as a whole, the board have their discussion, then the board hear the rest of the signed up speakers before the board take any action, as opposed to the dialogue back and forth. That's just my suggestion.
I totally agree. Mr. Newbound?
So then the conclusion, if we're going to, we need to first get ourselves together to figure out what we individually feel is going to be it. We've got to shut down this communication, and we're gonna have to stand or fall on our decision of what we're gonna do with this. As far as the Lee County Sheriff is concerned, I think you ought to make as much noise as you possibly can, and every time and any time you see something that you think is suspicious, I want Chris Laylor to hear every one of those phone calls that I've told him that we're getting instead. And I want those specialists to be the ones that are hearing your noise.
Are you
Okay?
finished?
I'm done.
Good.
I just-
Hold
I-
on just a second. When we had the show of hands, I didn't get a precise count. I think by far the majority of the folks in the audience said they wanted a fence. But I was interested in the deputy. Raised his hand as opposing to the fence, which means you get to come back to the podium again, sir.
Obviously, I don't live here. I don't know that community well. But I'm 31 years old. I like being active, proactive. When it comes to kids playing basketball, by lifting that fence, you could put a big fence, security cameras, a deputy inside. You could put the SWAT team just with rifles. If the drug dealer wants to sell, he's gonna sell. If the buyer wants to buy, he's gonna buy.
Yeah.
You guys gonna waste so much money in building this fence, putting key cars, chasing people, paying us $30-50 to park there. It's not gonna help. What's gonna help is you guys. You guys see something, take pictures, call us. We get that information, we forward to the Intel department. Intel department gives it to NARCs, which is narcotics. Narcotics builds his case, they go shut the dealer down. It's that simple.
Well, you make it sound simple,
It
but
is.
these folks don't seem to agree with you.
All right.
I wanna ask you this. Every time I go by a Lee County school building, every one, it's fenced, and we know why it's fenced.
Correct.
And it seems to be successful, or they wouldn't keep putting expensive fences around their school buildings.
You're right. But who's paying for that?
Well, we all are. We all are,
Taxpayers.
and we're all gonna pay for a fence if we put a fence in
Correct.
here and
But-
lock it up at 8 o'clock.
I'm new to this. Is the problem inside the court or outside the court?
it's not in the park.
Okay.
There you go.
It's at 7-Eleven, it's everywhere out here.
You're gonna make
It's
it
not
look like
just
a
in the
prison.
Yeah, there's
So that
parking
means
lot
you have to
around.
put fences, gas stations, everything. It's not gonna stop. You want selected enforcement, meaning call us. We like to come over here, you know why? Because when we come over here, we make an arrest. When we make an arrest, we look good. We make Mike Scott look good.
Okay.
That's how this works. Yes, there are some deputies, they are lazy. Yes, there are some deputies that come over here, just drive around. But there are some of us are selective. We come over here and yes, we would like to get that car. Why? Because if we find drugs in that car, not only we get the car, we get the drugs and we get him out of here. And he would tell his friend at the jail, hey, there's cops at the gateway. Stay away from there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Doug, you had.
Yeah, I got a couple things, and I think the root cause, I don't really care if they're residents or non-residents. It's the ones that aren't abiding by the rules and are creating problems that we need to address. So, and I've seen it in other areas. What I would like to see come out of this meeting today is at least some short-term actions. I think we need to look at viability of lighting. Are there dark areas that make it difficult for law enforcement to identify when there's someone there? Makes it difficult for our residents to identify when there might be, I can't even say teenagers or what the age they are because I don't know if we have that data. I think we need to address the lighting, which April has recommended. I think we do need to invest 3 months worth of details on Friday and Saturday night from whatever the hours are, 9 to 1 or 2 in the morning for 3 months. Let's see if that deterrent either is a result of arrests or just by sheer presence. I think we should invest that amount of money as at least a starting point. Third, I do think signage is a low-cost first step. I've looked at the signage. It's outdated, it's faded, it doesn't really call any attention. So I think, again, low cost, we need to update the signage. We could put things like warning this is a crime watch community or monitored by our residents with the phone number of the police department. There's some there's some signs out there that will catch your attention. And don't just place them in the front, have them at various positions. What we're trying to do is deter poor or illegal activity. So that's the one thing that I think we should do. There is trash. There's trash left over, even ball players. I mean, my kids leave water bottles at the soccer park, and I got to remind them, go pick your water bottle up. But that happens. But that shouldn't be the resident's responsibility. So maybe we could work with staff to do some rounds to at least make sure the park is clean. So signs, for my short-term suggestion would be update signage, 3-month sheriff detail for Friday, Saturday night as a start, and then make sure we do some rounds for cleanup. And the parking issue, I think we need to look into the ability for the sheriff's department to write citations if we deem that parking lot is something that is within their scope, if we allow them to do that. Because a citation, I would much rather have a resident who just happens to park in the parking lot overnight to get a citation than to tow them. Now, if it's a vacant vehicle and it's been there for several days, a little bit different issue. I just don't know enough about the illegal parking at this point to make any other recommendation than let's look at how we can deter and possibly penalize those that are not following our rules and regulations.
Thank you. Now, the chairman gets to talk last. And so I'm going to make a few statements. You residents have given us a huge amount of information. And you expect us to act on it. If I were sitting in your chair, I would be saying to myself, what are these elected officials going to do for me now? And my answer to that is, what Mr. Banks suggested is wonderful, and I think we ought to proceed with most of all of that. But I think we ought to start putting a fence around that place, and we ought to start doing it as soon as we possibly can. I've seen the fences around the Lee County School building, and I wouldn't try and get over there with a pogo stick. Now then, what I'm going to ask is for a motion from this board to proceed immediately to start constructing a fence around this facility with a gate or gates that will be opened and closed by the staff, and they'll get to work that out. But that, I think, is the kind of response that you're entitled to in order to put if not put a stop, put a good slowing down of these terrible things that you've been describing to us. So with that, may I have a motion to construct a fence around this? Wait a minute, I'm right in the middle. May I have a motion to construct a fence around this park? What?
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest you just keep going for that.
Yes.
If you get a motion in a second, then I'll give some guidance to the board before any action is taken, because you need to hear from the public before the action is taken if you get the motion in second. So I think the public should wait for the opportunity.
We've been listening, Mr.
But we put in our sheets beforehand and we didn't.
Ma'am, I think what I'm advising, the chair will advise you, you'll have the opportunity to
You're
speak.
gonna have some opportunity here.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
I have just a little bit of a concern of us making the motion that you are suggesting at this particular meeting when I don't know that this was, if we're going to do this at that park, I think it needs to be on an agenda that is published a week ahead of time so that all of the residents that are going to be associated with this or impacted by it have an opportunity to have their say. And I think this kind of came up, wasn't on the original agenda, it wasn't posted for everyone to get the information, and I just have a concern about that.
I think I think the items that I'd like to get done is the motion that I'd like to make as a short-term solution, which will give us opportunity to vet out other long-term solutions with the residents that not only live, but who use those amenities.
Okay,
You good with that?
at this point, I'm asking for a motion to begin construction of a fence around
Yeah.
that facility. Do I have a motion?
Not for me.
Okay, no one is willing to make that motion, so we're going to,
Not at this time.
proceed in a different direction.
Okay.
Just a second. There's at least one, if not two people who feel that they have been neglected. Do we have, requests to speak from folks that we
Yes.
ignored?
Ms. Sutton has, representing Mike Blackburn and herself. Ms. Tinsley, has not spoken, and Mr. Tinkle is still on the list.
I'm not interested in Mr. Tinkle, just.
Okay.
No offense, Ed.
There are three sheets
How's that
that
make
have
you
not
feel,
been
Ed?
addressed on the fun part.
Warm and fuzzy?
We've listened, to
Yeah.
Kendra Sutton more than anyone else. I don't think we need to listen to her again at this time.
I object, you told me if I needed to approach again, that I could, and I would just like to clarify a couple things.
Please approach.
Mr. Chairman, I think the chair has the prerogative to, typically, I think the speaker is limited, I think, is it 3 minutes, Cal, listed on there?
Yes, 5 minutes is.
5 minutes.
That's
And
fine.
So you may.
So my first item that Kendra Sutton, 12450 Eagle Point. First thing I'd like to do is correct the explanation that Ms. White also corrected on me about law enforcement in explaining about the Lee County. Yes, we will continue to call you. We do call you as much as humanly possible. What was explained was the pressure that puts on, and then when you're talking about getting resolution in the park, when they can't respond for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, the situation's gone. So we're not getting the results we're looking for. What was suggested by Canfield was that because it is private, that there be some sort of private security, which I believe Mr. Banks is suggesting. The other thing that we do know, it's not only after dusk. Games take place starting 5 o'clock after work, sometimes 4 o'clock. We are seeing that during the daylight hours when the hours are longer, and they are out there playing. The other clarification is we do not have a desire to take down and ruin the basketball. Where that came up was to try a 2-week trial to see if that detoured the activity we were seeing in the parking lot. That was a suggestion that was enhanced on. And yet you have residents for 18 months that have been trying to address this situation with the board, and finally it's taken this since February and really taking this public to start getting some ears to listen. But this has been an 18-month issue that this started about 18 months ago. And I've lived there 15 years, and it just started where we really started seeing things and having problems that it was worth speaking about. So this isn't new. This isn't, I presented this at the board in April. So clarification on that is that it is not the desire to get rid of the basketball. The desire, what was discussed is if we can't get any monitoring, we can't get any security, we can't get cameras, we can't get motion lighting, we can't get any of these things residents have been asked and suggested for ideas, then it was, well, then we need to swap it out and see if we swap the situation for something else, does it detour that? And so that's where that came up. Amenities are something we'd all like to see.
Okay, I'm gonna cut
So,
you off.
that's
You're
it.
You're way over your time. There are a couple
Okay.
other folks who haven't spoken, and the board still has a lot of work to do on this, I think. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, who else do we have, Mr. Manager?
We have Greg Cohen? Cohen.
Chairman. Greg Cohane, 12630 Eagle Point Circle. I am one of those who does not necessarily want to see anything happen to the basketball court. I think it's proper and does a good job, but I would like to move to the top of the list, or close to the top of the list, the possibility, especially among those who would like to see the basketball retained, to consider some kind of an implementation of a community watch or a neighborhood watch. It could be on random times of the afternoon, so that over a course of weeks, the people who are problem people would say, there's community watch here, we never know when they're going to show up, let's move to another place. I think the signage is an excellent idea, especially with a large evidence of a phone number that will be called if the neighborhood watch finds something that they consider inappropriate, rather than have the neighbor attempt to confront anybody individually. That would take the sting out of the young lady who said, do we have the right to ask people where they're from? This way, if we see an issue going on in a neighborhood watch, we could call the proper number, and even if someone does leave before the authorities arrive, they would begin to see a pattern of people coming on random basis to watch that part of the park. The basketball courts don't necessarily have to be taken down. I am personally irritated by the disrespect with the people in their cars doing donuts out in the park, on the lawn, and disrespecting the neighborhood by throwing their rubbish out there, knowing that the next day someone's going to come out and pick it up for them. I just think we shouldn't be training these people to throw their junk out where I and other people who walk their dogs often pick up their refuse. I just don't think that teaches the right lesson. But a neighborhood watch, I think, could be moved further up before spending, even before spending a massive amount of money on a fence. I don't know what would be accomplished by having a fence. If it would be something that was demonstrated to be feasible and efficient and effective, that would be worth considering, but I think an economical approach might be the neighborhood watch, at least in the short term, 3 months and random times. Thanks for your help.
Thank you, Greg.
Can I ask him a question? Greg, can I ask you a
By all means.
just a couple quick?
Yes, sure.
Number one, have you personally found the trash? I went, since this all came up.
He's a garbage collector.
Hold on, ladies. Have you personally found the trash?
I will detail briefly: used diapers, condoms, condom wrappers,
Okay.
water bottles, Popeyes boxes, McDonald's boxes, big gulp cups.
Okay.
Is that enough?
Is there specifically, I noticed that Doug left out Wednesdays, but yet you went Wednesday and you found this group, but you talked about Friday and Saturday. Is there a specific day?
I'm talking
of
after
those-
hours is what I was thinking.
Well, she went after hours, because we haven't even discussed the fact of dusk till dawn yet we're going for people playing at night. We're not enforcing our own rules.
Yeah.
Is there a specific Wednesday, Friday, or Saturday that is the day?
No, it's
Anytime.
all the time, and almost each and every morning there will be refuse left behind by people the night before who don't respect the park. I don't think Gateway residents would be the ones who are doing donuts out in the lawn and making a mess. I think that's an outside element, and I'm not sure a fence is going to do anything about that.
I'm with you.
Any further?
Thank you, sir. Thanks.
Greg,
I am.
There's a pickup league on Wednesday and Thursday nights that is definitive.
It is.
But they do clear the park like 7:30. It's not, it takes place in the parking lot when they're done, the beer, the whatever, but then that leaves. The issues Doug is referring to, they're two totally separate issues. The sex in the park, the cars up underneath the trees on Friday and Saturday night, the music. I mean, we have a resident in here that has documented all this since February and sent it in. The music, the emails, the partying at 1, 2 a.m., the boats parked in the back of the field behind, et cetera. It's all been documented, pictures.
Kendra, thank you. Wait just a minute. Do we have,
We have one more, the last fun park
We still have,
request.
Erin's got her hand up, and she lives 36 feet from the park.
Erin has already spoken, thank you, Greg.
Okay.
We have this one lady's been trying to speak.
Whitney Tinsley, and it's the last fun park sheet I've got.
Hi, Whitney Tinsley, 12610 Eagle Point Circle. I too live directly right behind the park, and I've lived there for 26 years. The park was there before we moved into our house. That was one of the reasons why we purchased our home. I've raised 3 boys there that have used that park plenty times. I have one that just graduated from high school, still using that park, and he has friends that live from outside of Gateway that continuously use that park in the basketball goal. I agree with the neighborhood watch. I think that's an excellent idea. I think fencing a park when it is a fun park and it has a children's playground on it, we all at some point have had young children, and when they get to be the age of 8 to 10 to 12, they're over at that park by themselves. They're not responsible. I don't want a fence. They're not responsible for a key or a card or anything else to get in that. The liability I feel associated with a young child, you cannot get a young child for trespassing. You can't do that.
Let's say again,
You can't get a young child underage for trespassing. If they're 10 years old and they tried to scale a fence and they broke their neck, you guys are gonna be liable. I'm sorry. I may be wrong, Mr. Attorney, but if they're over there unattended, which a lot of the children are, you know, in the best case scenario, parents should always be with their children, but we know that that's not the case. But I do live there. I walk my dogs over there 4 or 5 times, 6 times, sometimes a day. And I am one of the ones that do pick up quite a bit of the garbage, and I've been doing that for 26 years. It's just as much from the Gateway residents as it is from anyone else. The drug paraphernalia that I have witnessed in the last 2 years or so is way down from what it used to be from 8 to 10 years ago. I used to pick up a whole lot of drug paraphernalia, and it is, in my opinion, since the basketball guys are there, they're not the ones dealing drugs. It's way down, and like I said from the seat just a while ago, when I have gone over there and there's been any loud music or anything that I have found disruptive because my house backs up to it, they've been nothing but respectful to me and turn their music down or whatever. I've never had any confrontation. They typically, a lot of them will come up to me and want to see the dogs because they're big shepherds.
So your suggestion is the neighborhood watch?
I like the neighborhood watch, and I think it should be neighborhood watch and also possibly intermix that with some patrolling. I don't think it needs to be on a set night. I think it should be a random night. And also, perhaps, I know the church had installed some cameras, and I believe from their vantage point, they have seen things go way down since they installed their cameras. Perhaps we install cameras over there before we go to any long-term big expense of that. It is a fun park. It's designed for children, for young men, for older men, whatever. Mr. Brown is here every day. He is out there at the park playing basketball every morning. There's another gentleman out there that's there 3 times a day. To change it to something that it has not been for 26 years would be a travesty to this community, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, have we heard all of the folks that have asked to speak on the West Fun Park?
Yes.
Okay. The board's gonna stand in recess for 10 minutes.
Don't forget, we do have a deputy, so take it easy.
No wheelies in the parking lot.
Wow.
Literally the one that I picked out, it says crime watch right there. Report all suspicious activity. And that's just, this is what it is.